When our board was set up, the basis for our work was the decision that the council took. We were not part of that. The decision the council took that it could no longer afford the revenue funding to maintain the parks. Very, very difficult decision, I'm sure, for the councillors that they took because of the severe cutbacks in funding that they encountered, as many parts of the country have also done so. So we were faced with a situation of some really well-kept parks. Knowsley is very well endowed for really high-quality provision, and the council's invested a lot in the last few years. We were faced with trying to find a way of maintaining as much as we possibly could of the excellent quality of these great parks for the people of Knowsley. And that was our task, to find an alternative delivery model which would maintain as much as possible quality parks, so that in the lack of funding, parks didn't begin to fall back into disrepair, antisocial behaviour, real problems that could occur without council revenue funding. So this was our starting point. The board was made up of a good range of colleagues. We had colleagues from the council, Knowsley Council, we had parish councillors, we had several representatives of friends, communities, allotment groups, we had representatives of the voluntary sector, the private sector, the housing sector, and very importantly we had a number of experts who really have a national profile, some of them, in understanding and working on the issues around preserving parks and green spaces. So it was a really good cross-section, I think, including some academics as well. So colleagues working together for over a 6-month period from different, mainly people from Knowsley, but a few from outside as well. As part of our work, we did a lot of research into what sort of models were possible. And that research included desk research, presentations from experts in the field, and then going out across the country, visiting a number of trusts, organisations that were funding parks in a slightly different way than from a straightforward local authority funding model, because we were asked to look at alternative models. So that brought us quite sharply up against what was possible or what was not possible, what would work and what wouldn't work. And it was really on the basis of that research that we really came to unanimous conclusion, actually, that there seemed to us only one solid, robust way forward that would maintain the overwhelming majority of parks in perpetuity. So that was where we came to after a lot of research. It wasn't where we all thought we were going to end up. Many of us thought there were different ways of doing this. Perhaps we could raise money commercially. Perhaps people would subscribe to be a member of a park. Or we looked at a number of different models that were suggested to us. But for a whole set of parks and green spaces across a whole authority, nobody has done what we came up with, but people have done bits of that. So we found the model of a charitable trust seemed to be robust, like National Trust or the Lancashire Wildlife Trust and so on. There are trusts across the country which are totally free, accessible for people to use, to enjoy, but not for profit. So that was one fairly firm recommendation we came up with, that you need a voluntary sector charitable trust model. And the second was that we found is that to really preserve parks and green spaces in perpetuity, you need some sort of an endowment. You need a regular source of income that you can rely on. And that came over to all of us. Some of us didn't know about this model at the beginning. By the end of it, we were convinced that an endowment which gives you a regular source of income to maintain the overwhelming majority of the parks was the right proposal. And that endowment could be created by the council borrowing money over a 15-year period and over that 15-year period, the council would release gradually up to 10% of the parks and green spaces in their possession, and the 90% go into the trust, safe forever in terms of the future use for the community. And that was the final proposals that we came up with, and we unanimously felt that seemed to us the only solution, actually. And that was for us a very steep learning curve, but we were all convinced at the end of it that this was the right thing to do and would preserve the great parks and green spaces that there are in Knowsley, and hopefully improve that 90% even further in the coming years. Well, I have to say I'm really delighted that the authority agreed our proposals in full. We're really, really delighted with that. I think it's very courageous of the councillors to take this decision. For us, we were just making a recommendation, an independent body, but the council has to carry it through. And I think they've shown great courage and foresight and integrity to really be determined to develop this proposal. I think other parts of the country will be very, very interested to look at this, because it's the first time that the local authority will have set up a trust in this way to oversee the overwhelming majority of parks and green spaces. Some authorities have hived off bits of a park or put that into a trust, but not the whole totality. And that's so I think it's very pioneering work that the Knowsley embarked on, and I'm really delighted that they've taken that decision.